As AI adoption scales in 2026, there's a new gap emerging, and most people are not seeing it. The barrier to entry has dropped, okay? Almost anyone can use AI. And so the advantage is no longer just using AI, but it's actually about using it correctly. There's a lot of companies that are integrating it into their daily workflows. They're no longer experimenting it, okay, in their tools like Claude, ChatGPT, Perplexity. And so people are getting familiar with it, they're getting fancy with it, they're doing a lot of different things. But here's what most people are missing. The thing is, people are still using it and they're asking it basic questions. Okay, they're using AI like an upgraded search engine, like they go to Google, and they're focusing on outputs. They're not focusing on systems. So, what this means is, I'm not saying that the strategy won't work. The thing is that this strategy was much more big in 2024, 2023, and so on. But the way things are moving so quickly, it's already outdated. So let's talk about prompt engineering. And it's not just talking to AI better. That's not what it is. It's actually structured thinking. The ability to define a specific goal clearly enough so that you can get a machine to execute it. AI doesn't think like a human, right? It follows patterns, it predicts the next best step, and it's based on what is provided, what is given. So the input determines everything. If you give it vague input, it's just going to give you very generic output. If you give it very clear input, like, if you're saying this role, this is what I want, this is kind of the output, and you can keep customizing it, you got to realize it's not a search. It's more closer to maybe briefing an executive assistant or something of that style where you're giving directions and it's not just the keywords, but what drives success is if you think about it as an outcome, not as just a tool. So people who win are not just asking, what can this tool do? Instead, what they're thinking about is, what outcome do I want, right? And how do I design it? How do I design the AI to get me there? So think of it as more of a system over prompts. And there could be things like people are doing one-off prompts, and then there's repeatable workflows with high leverage. So the shift is actually, for example, if I have to put it like, maybe help me plan a trip. That's what people are putting. But a system doesn't think like that. It thinks in terms of tokens. It thinks in terms of how you're outputting or inputting specific search in there or specific kind of input variables so that you can help it understand the context. So it tries to understand and decipher per what you've placed in there, all the different things. So in this case, for example, if it was a trip, you have to give it information like, what's the budget? What's the preferences? What's the time frame? What kind of destinations are you looking for? Are you looking for something that's a day-to-day itinerary that can be built? What is the weather? What is the time, cost, or optimization based on experience? So you have to build it like a system, and that's where the real value is. Now, a lot of people, what they're doing is they're just kind of giving questions and putting information that's very simple, and it's not giving it enough imagination or expectation. The more specific you are, the more strategic you are with it, the better. So another example is, there's some people who are, what they're doing is they're saying, write me a marketing post. It doesn't work like that. You have to kind of share what is your audience insight, what are the variations you can provide, how would you perform specific tests, what are the what are the ways that you're looking for in terms of metrics. So those are the things that you have to provide as inputs. And so clarity, that's the competitive advantage. Now, there's a lot of shifts that are happening in people who think clearly, who provide that kind of strategic output, like, you're providing good information, are the ones who can use the same tool and get completely different results. So the people who are just giving whatever, they're putting something in, it may be fast, but it may not be clear. And then there are people who are clear thinkers and they're putting exactly what they want. And that itself is a mastery. Okay. So tools are evolving really fast and prompting is embedded into the interface. So most people, what they're doing is they're not really learning how to do it in a traditional sense. So the gap is not disappearing, it's shifting. There's a difference between asking a specific idea or there's, providing a outcome with constraints, structure, execution, context, and same topic could be completely different results. So that gap is really valuable. So there's a lot of levels that people are not seeing right now. And the way they're breaking it down is the level one is the prompts. So if you write better inputs, then you get better outputs. And the level two would be contextual. So you add background, you add the tone, the rules, the constraints, and you're kind of giving it step by step, like a story. And the third one is where the leverage is the intent. You have to define what the success metrics or the output looks like. And so, what matters the most in this order is where the control happens, and very few people are actually operating in this manner. So, the opportunity is that there's a lot of professions, a lot of new titles, different variations of opportunities that are coming up. And the people who have these skills, whether they're business people, whether they're in a company, is having AI tools and data that they can start automating, but they don't have those clear outcomes. So what ends up happening is it provides very general content. And as you know, AI can be really helpful for a person. And that's where we're steering towards. We're steering towards AI companionship or AI as an assistant or augmentation. So it can generate reports, it can generate ideas, brainstorming, content, whatever you want to use it for. But the creativity, the strategy, the opportunity to break it down is where people would be really having that new opportunity. So let's talk about what's going on. So it's not just about being an operator where you're valuable because anyone can go in and type stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. But if you can connect the intent, you can connect the context, the execution. So you're defining what is the goal, what is the input, what's the output or the context, and design it in a form of workflows instead of using it very specifically, just kind of like typing a search keyword. It becomes a system that identifies what are these specific customers, who are these people, building for, what are the test variations, how do you read results. And as you keep entering all of this information continuously, it no longer becomes a tool, it actually becomes a function. And with the way things are moving really quickly, things are moving into autonomous AI or agentic AI. So it's very important to know what the context is. And when you connect the intent, the context, the execution, that's where some of the new roles are coming up. And these are actually going to be some of the ones that people succeed in. So one is the AI architect. Okay. And so in simple terms, what it means is they build systems using AI. So they take a specific goal and say if they're going into a specific company, and they break it into steps and they're connecting the tools into a workflow. So people who would do something like this would be charging for building systems. Next, we have AI strategy consultant, which helps businesses to share how do they use AI, right? So they look at the current process, they look at what's working well, what's not working well, and they suggest where the AI fits in. And so people are making money with these strategy calls, ongoing advice, and providing information to companies and businesses and so on. And then the next one is automation operators. So they run AI systems. So they're literally doing the heavy work or heavy lifting for people. They manage the workflows, they fix the systems. And what they do is they help run everything smoothly. So people are making that kind of money. And I think these are the different opportunities that are coming up right now as we speak. And the way things are going so fast, people are not really going into the education model, more so into certifications and kind of learning it as they go into practice. So another opportunity I see is the AI Solopreneur, and I think that's what I think there was OpenAI, Anthropic, they're all talking about it, where with Agentic AI, it's going to be completely different. It's a one-man show, and people or business people no longer need all these different people or, departments or agencies. They create everything all in one, but they define the system. So they create an agentic AI or multiple bots. And what they're doing is saving time, saving money. They're able to do this remote. They can do it anywhere. And they're automating parts of their business so that they can provide these services to other people. They can build income streams. They can sell these products. And all of these roles that I'm talking about are focusing on something that's in common. They're all focusing on systems. They're not talking about tasks. They're talking about ideas to execution and the ability for AI to save time, the ability to increase output without having to take all of this capital and put it into teams or systems. The reason why this matters right now is actually that there's a completely different change. Things are going more and more into location independent work. People are being AI powered. And so, what we saw in the 80s, the 90s, and even the 2000s is so different. Automation is no longer an option, and people are becoming their own experts, or they're hiring people to do this for them so that they can quickly go forward and improve their systems. And so it's quickly becoming that base layer for income generation, remote work, global talent, global competition. And so the skill is highly portable. There's a lot of leverage, and it's still under recognized because I think right now is the starting point. So the next few years, the way this is going to be is the systems are going to change, and it's not about better models. It's not about more data. It's not about more, capital or anything. Truly, it's going to be people who can define a specific goal, different output, and use a system to execute it. That's going to be a very rare skill. So over the next few years, this will reshape how people work, how people think, where they live. And I do see that, the AI systems are not going anywhere else. It's going to be more and more where people will start using it for everything, and possibly there's going to be AI agents that are on behalf of companies, behalf of people, and they could be more and more autonomous, and they're working in the online world or the digital world. So the bottom line is it's not an advantage that everybody's using AI. I think it's more about in directing what it's going to be. It's never going to replace thinking. I think creativity, strategy, execution, this is all based on a person who can think clearly. They have that leverage. And it all depends on the output, the systems. And if people have something like, they have unclear thinking and they're putting in all sorts of things within this, within their chatbot, they're not going to get good information. It's going to be noise. So it's going to separate the people who are with intent, level of intent, as I was mentioning, context, intent, and systems. So it's not just prompts that we're looking at. We're stepping into a space that is completely different. And I think right now, this is where it's going to be. It's going to be the opportunity for the future. And I think there's multiple other things coming up with the multi-agent bots, agentic AI. So that's the advantage. That's where the opportunity lies. And I think it's going to be a completely different world that we live in right now. All right, I'm going to talk to you guys next time.